In this video, we will demonstrate and discuss the use of the Blom speech cannula with the Maquet Servo-i ventilator. Our lung compliance on the test lung is 0.06, which would mimic a patient with reduced lung compliance. Before attempting the speech cannula with any patient, be sure to suction the trachea as well as the velopharynx in order to remove any secretions that could potentially obstruct airflow. To begin, we have the ventilator in volume control SIMV with a rate of 10, tidal volume 600, pressure support of 15, peak flow of 40, and PEEP of 5. With the Blom standard cannula, the peak inspiratory pressure is 17 centimeters of water. Now, with the speech cannula inserted, you can see that PEEP is maintained. You will also note that the ventilator is registering an increased peak inspiratory pressure of 25 centimeters of water. This is due to the narrowing at the flap valve of the speech cannula. However, you can see in our test lung that intrapulmonary change is minimal as compared to the peak inspiratory pressure with the standard cannula. This indicates that while the ventilator measures increased peak inspiratory pressure with the speech cannula, intrapulmonary pressure has not substantially changed. It is important to note that if you do see the ventilator registering more than a 10 centimeter of water increase in peak inspiratory pressure in volume control during speech cannula use, this may be indicative of upper airway obstruction or air trapping. In this case, remove the speech cannula from the patient and replace it with a standard or subglottic suctioning cannula. Check that the flap and bubble valves are moving properly and that the tracheostomy tube is well seated within the patient. Suction the patient again and reattempt the speech cannula. It may also be helpful to make ventilator changes to facilitate improved ventilation. If the patient continues to demonstrate reduced upper airway airflow, discontinue use of the speech cannula and reevaluate the patient. Reasons for poor tolerance of the speech cannula include the patient's underlying respiratory or neuromuscular diagnosis or airway obstruction. If airway obstruction is suspected, consider an endoscopic evaluation to rule this out. Now let's look at a patient in pressure control with pressure set at 15 centimeters of water, pressure support at 10, and PEEP of 5. Because pressure is the controlled variable in this mode, peak inspiratory pressure will not exceed the pressure at which it is set. And again, you can see that PEEP is maintained. Once you have the speech cannula in place, place the exhaled volume reservoir into the exhalation side of the circuit. The EVR is a bellows device that traps 30 to 50 milliliters of air during inhalation and returns it to the ventilator during exhalation. This device helps to eliminate the obligatory low volume alarms that occur whenever a patient is exhaling through their upper airway instead of back to the ventilator. In order for the speech cannula to best interface with the Servo-i, turn the low minute volume alarm down to its lowest active setting of 0.5. Turn your circuit compliance compensation off. Depending upon the software version being used, it may also be necessary to add an inspiratory pause, or T-pause, of 0.1 second in volume ventilation. This gives the ventilator circuit a brief moment to stabilize without flow prior to the exhalation valve opening to allow for expired air to pass. We have found that adding this inspiratory pause may be an important step to ensure that the EVR successfully eliminates low exhaled volume alarms with the Servo-i when in volume control ventilation. However, again, with certain software versions, it may not be necessary to use the inspiratory pause. If patient and ventilator variables prevent the EVR from successfully eliminating the low volume alarms, consider changing the patient into non-invasive ventilation, which allows for greater leak tolerance in regards to alarms. If the ventilator auto-triggers, which is known also as auto-cycling, go to pressure triggering and decrease the value to make the ventilator less sensitive. It may also be helpful to increase your inspiratory time in order to deliver the flow more slowly in volume ventilation. In pressure control ventilation, increasing T inspiratory rise will decrease the flow rate and also allow for flow to be delivered more slowly. In the event of air trapping or breath stacking, such that your patient is unable to fully exhale, it may be helpful to decrease the inspiratory time in order to deliver the flow more quickly. This will allow for more complete exhalation prior to the next inspiration. Keep in mind patient and ventilator variables including lung compliance, ventilator settings, current respiratory status, and circuit compliance will impact the tolerance of the speech cannula.